Good afternoon to you all. May I call on our colleagues to take their seats so that we can start our meeting. Your Excellencies, dear friends, I thank you all for coming, and allow me to start by thanking His Excellency Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for being with us today on the 9th conference that Sweden and Jordan have been organizing in support of the organization. I'll make a few brief remarks and then hand over to my co-convener, and then we'll have the honor of hearing the Secretary General, who will have to leave after delivering his remarks. I'm sure all of you understand the pressure on his time at this point. My friends, thank you for being here. The indispensability of UNRWA cannot be questioned, nor can the fact that UNRWA cannot be replaced. For doing that is questioning the right of Palestinian children to food, to shelter, to education, and to hope. UNRWA cannot be replaced. Never before has UNRWA been needed more, as we see the catastrophe in Gaza unfolding day in, day out. UNRWA has made the ultimate sacrifice. 24 people of its staff were killed by Israel in this war. Its shelters accommodated 1.9 million Palestinians whose homes, houses, neighborhoods Israel destroyed in this aggression. UNRWA schools, most of them were disseminated. Those that still stand are sheltering Palestinians, children, women who are killed by Israeli bombs and starved by Israeli siege, denying them water, food, medicine. We need UNRWA because nobody can help the Palestinians in Gaza more than UNRWA now. Your support is key. We need it. UNRWA needs it. The people who depend on UNRWA now for a drop of water, a pill of medicine, a cover, and a roof depend on your support. We should celebrate UNRWA's heroism and the heroism of its staff. We should thank Lazzarini, Felipe, my dear friend, for the noble work that you're doing, for putting the lives of your people, for your people putting their lives at the front line to save Palestinians in need. We salute you. We thank you. My friends, UNRWA has been the target of political assassination by Israel long before October 7. For UNRWA started when the Palestinian refugees started decades ago. All through those years, UNRWA has been there for Palestinian refugees who needed it. UNRWA is a story of human sacrifice and human support that accompanied the tale of misery that the Palestinians have lived for over 7 decades. Israel doesn't want UNRWA to continue, not just because of what's happening in Gaza now. It does not want UNRWA to continue because it would to kill the hope of the Palestinian people for addressing the refugees issue. Because UNRWA is associated with the inalienable right of Palestinian refugees, entrenched in international law, entrenched in General Assembly resolution, to have justice done to them by implementing UN resolutions that speak of their right to return and compensation. I will not go on enlisting facts about UNRWA. I think you all know them. I will just plead with you all that the will of the international community that renewed UNRWA's mandate with a tremendous majority must be translated into practical action, into practical support to protect UNRWA, to support UNRWA politically, to support it financially, because every dollar that goes to UNRWA could mean a life saved. I will stop at that and again reiterate our appreciation for your attending our conference, and again plead with you all to stand on the right of justice, on the side of justice, to stand by UNRWA, to stand by millions of Palestinians who, without UNRWA, will not have a shot, not only at a decent life, but will not have a shot. Many of them will not have a shot at life in these terrible conditions where the Israeli aggression on Gaza continues unabated. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to give the floor to my co-convener, my dear friend, the Foreign Minister of Sweden, who had just assumed her responsibility. So I congratulate you, my friend. I wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to continuing our partnership in this noble mission of supporting UNRWA and its great staff and its great work. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my friend Minister Safadi, Secretary General, Ministers, Excellencies. I too would like to welcome you to this meeting, which I'm very pleased to co-chair with Deputy Prime Minister Safadi. First, allow me to express my sincere appreciation to all of you for joining this discussion and reaffirming our support to UNRWA in this crucial time. I am also grateful for the strong commitment and invaluable leadership of the Secretary General, who is here with us today. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. We witness immense and devastating suffering of the civilian population. Without the tireless efforts by UNRWA and other humanitarian actors on the ground, the humanitarian needs would be unimaginable. I therefore want to reiterate my deepest appreciation for the crucial work of UNRWA and all humanitarian personnel working to provide relief to those in most need. I also wish to express my heartfelt condolences for the loss of over 224 UNRWA personnel. The international community must now do more to improve security for humanitarian actors and increase humanitarian access to ensure that assistance reaches all parts of Gaza. We must also continue calls on both parties to implement immediately the comprehensive roadmap for an enduring ceasefire, which is urgently needed. In light of the acute situation for Palestinian refugees, the underfunding of UNRWA remains deeply concerning. We welcome the generous contributions from several new and recurring donors since October last year. However, more steps must be taken towards a sufficient, predictable and sustainable funding for the agency, including by broadening the donor base. The strong political support expressed for UNRWA, as demonstrated here today, must be matched with concrete financial commitments. In parallel, we need to initiate an honest conversation on long-term solutions to ensure the continued delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestinian refugees in need, as well as to maintain a sustainable UNRWA. Member States must take strides to support UNRWA's mandate and efforts to preserve the agency's upholding of humanitarian principles, including through implementation of the recommendations in the Colonna report. UNRWA's ability to continue its assistance to Palestinian refugees across all areas of operation is crucial for the stability in the region. This is not the least the case in the field of quality education, where UNRWA plays a key role. The re-establishment of large-scale education will be crucial for the long-term development in Gaza. In this regard, donors must strengthen support to UNRWA to ensure access to quality education which upholds the UN values. I now look forward to hearing your thoughts on how the international community can support UNRWA in this time of unprecedented challenges. Because beyond words of support, we now urgently need concrete action and realistic options for a way forward. Thank you. And it is now my pleasure to give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, I thank the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and Sweden for co-chairing this gathering and for their continued leadership in the support to UNRWA. And I also thank all of you here today for your solidarity with Palestine refugees. When we met 1 year ago, I spoke about putting ourselves in the shoes of Palestinians in Gaza, of imagining what life must be like. And I ended my remarks 1 year ago by saying, this is the most dramatic humanitarian problem associated with the riskiest explosive potential. This was just days before the horrors of October 7. Now, almost 1 year since that day, the situation for Palestinians in Gaza is beyond imagination. It has been said that the United Nations was not created to bring us to heaven, but to save us from hell. Unfortunately, neither the United Nations nor anyone else that might have the power to do it was able to save the people of Gaza from hell. We have failed the people of Gaza. They are in a living hell that somehow gets even worse by the day. Over 41,000 people have been reportedly killed and more than 90,000 wounded, many with life-changing and lifelong injuries. The majority are women and children. 2 million Palestinians are now crammed into a space the size of Shanghai International Airport, existing, not living, but existing, among lakes of sewage, piles of rubbish, and mountains of rubble. The only certainty they have is that tomorrow will be worse. Yet, if there is any outpost of hope in this hellscape, it is UNRWA. Even though UNRWA, as we all know, has not been spared. On the human level, 222 UNRWA colleagues have been killed, many together with entire families, several in the line of duty. This is the highest death toll in UN history. I ask you, all of you, to think for a moment in the different entities that you preside or to which we belong. What would be the impact if 222 members would have been killed, and even after that, having to go on with their duties to save the people of Palestine? UNRWA personnel have been attacked repeatedly while going about their work. Women and men are displaced, shot at, and subject to violent protests, detained by Israeli security forces, reporting mistreatment and torture. UNRWA has not been spared on the operational level. The humanitarian response in Gaza is being strangled. Protection and deconfliction mechanisms for humanitarian aid deliveries have failed. Attempts to evict UNRWA from its headquarters in East Jerusalem continue. And UNRWA has not been spared on the political level. These include systematic disinformation campaigns to discredit the agency's lifelong work. Meanwhile, draft legislation in the Israeli parliament seeks to label the agency a terrorist organization and to make any activity by UNRWA on Israel or Israel territory illegal. In the face of the catastrophic conditions, UNRWA perseveres. And this is a tribute to the resilience of the women and men of UNRWA and a tribute to your support. Excellencies, I have full confidence in UNRWA's continued commitment to upholding the humanitarian principles of neutrality, impartiality and humanity, and to implement the recommendations of the independent review by Catherine Colonna. And Member States are showing that same confidence. Virtually all donors have reversed their funding suspensions. 123 countries have signed up to the Declaration on Shared Commitments to UNRWA. And this underscores the consensus that UNRWA's role across the occupied West Bank and the region is vital. Friends, there is no alternative to UNRWA. Now is the time to work on all fronts to intensify support for the agency's vital mission. Support with funding that is sufficient, predictable, and flexible. Of course, we all know that UNRWA is not a sustainable long-term solution to the plight of Palestine refugees. It was never meant to be. That is why we keep pressing for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the immediate release of all hostages, and a long-term political solution, ending the occupation and leading to two states living side by side in peace and security with Jerusalem as the capital. But until that moment, UNRWA remains indispensable. I urge your full support. Help us to save UNRWA as it works to save and serve Palestine refugees. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Thank you not just for attending our meeting, but thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your principled stand on the side of international law, international humanitarian law, against very, very difficult odds. Your words have been an inspiration. Your positions have been a reminder that leaders have to lead. Sir, you have been leading very effectively and with dignity. We thank you for that. And with your permission, His Excellency, as you know, has a lot of commitments, so we'll suspend our meeting for just a few seconds until he departs. You'll stay?
Until 1:45.
Great, great. Then I give the floor to President of the General Assembly, whom again we congratulate you, sir, on the assumption of your duty, and we wish you the best of luck. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I begin by thanking the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the Kingdom of Sweden for organizing this important meeting. I extend my deep appreciation to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, represented today by its Commissioner General, His Excellency Philip Lazzarini. Mr. Lazzarini, please convey my heartfelt gratitude to all the agency's personnel who continue to provide vital assistance and protection under extraordinary, challenging circumstances. Excellencies, we convene at a time when the agency's work is more crucial than ever in light of the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. Thousands of women and children have been killed or injured, and millions others displaced. Civilian infrastructure across Gaza lies in ruins. In this dire context, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees plays a critical role in providing protection, shelter, food, water, and medical care to millions of suffering people in Gaza. Excellencies, dear friends, like all humanitarian organizations, the agency must be able to deliver its life-saving services safely and without hindrance. Over 220 of his staff have been killed while providing humanitarian assistance during the war in Gaza. Many of those displaced who sought refuge in the agency's facilities have also been killed or injured. International humanitarian law is unequivocal and must be respected by all parties to the conflict. Civilians, humanitarian workers, and civilian installations must be protected at all times. The endless cycle of death, destruction, and displacement in Gaza and the occupied West Bank will only end if the international community takes meaningful action toward a just, comprehensive, and lasting resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one based on international law, the United Nations Charter, and relevant United Nations resolutions. Only a two-state solution will allow Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace, security, and human dignity. Excellencies, as the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees faces challenging times, I call on member states to continue supporting it so that the agency can fulfill its mandate as directed by the General Assembly. This support includes providing the necessary political backing in the face of continued political and reputational attacks, and offering sufficient, predictable, and timely financial support to combat chronic underfunding. Millions of Palestinian refugees in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria rely on this support. They rely on your support, and we must not let them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now I'm honored to give the floor to the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini. Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Sweden, dear SG, dear colleagues, Excellency. As we gather here in New York, 2 million people are trapped in 10% of the Gaza Strip. This is a place which horrifies even the most seasoned humanitarian. It's also a place where international journalists cannot visit, and yet 1 million children live there amid rivers of polio carrying sewage in rubble infested with rodents and reptiles. More than 600 of these children are out of school. They have already lost 2 years of learning. Palestinians are no stranger to loss, but to be dispossessed from education, which has always been a source of tremendous pride, is new. We cannot afford to lose an entire generation and sow the seeds for future hatred and extremism. That is why UNRWA, beyond its life-saving operation, resumed some learning activities in Gaza last month. Every day, we provide psychosocial services to thousands of children. We build on these activities to help them read, write, and do basic arithmetic. And we will do so until their right to education is restored. Excellencies, we heard it, more than 41,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been reported killed. Many of the hostages taken from Israel remain in captivity. The occupied West Bank is gripped by escalating violence, and long-held fears of conflict spilling into Lebanon are being realized. And yet, the international community continues to equivocate. 75 years ago, the General Assembly established UNRWA to provide temporarily public-like services for Palestinian refugees. Absent a political solution, amid recurring conflict, and what the International Court of Justice has called an unlawful occupation, UNRWA has continued to deliver its mandate. Today, the agency is the beating heart of humanitarian operation in Gaza. Despite this, and perhaps because of it, UNRWA is under fierce attack. Excellencies, in Gaza, 222 UNRWA staff have been killed. More than 2/3 of our buildings have been damaged or destroyed. Our aid convoys are looted amid a collapse of civil order and obstructed by Israeli soldiers defying their chain of command. Disturbingly, senior Israeli officials have described destroying UNRWA as a war goal. We heard it. Draft legislation in the Israeli Knesset seeks to evict the agency from East Jerusalem, revoke its privileges and immunities, and designate it as a terrorist organization. An unconscionable action by a member state against a UN entity mandated by the General Assembly. And make no mistake, it is not only UNRWA that is under attack. Across the occupied Palestinian territory, United Nations and international NGO staff are being phased out. These efforts aim to strip Palestinians of the refugee status and change unilaterally the parameters for a future political solution. UNRWA also faces relentless allegations concerning breaches of neutrality. We take substantiated allegations seriously and investigate them thoroughly. In line with the colonial recommendation, we are strengthening already robust systems for ensuring the neutrality of our staff and operations. Our personnel are vetted against UN and other sanction lists. Our policy on outside and political activities is at the forefront of effort to prohibit behavior incompatible with serving as United Nations staff. Excellencies, I conclude with 3 appeals. First, I urge you to safeguard UNRWA's role in Gaza. A ceasefire is imperative, and the agency is critical for ensuring a viable transition. In the absence of a state, only UNRWA can fulfill the learning and healthcare needs of Palestinian refugees. Second, the agency requires a sustainable model of funding. UNRWA's operations are only secure until the end of October, with a shortfall of $80 million for 2024. 2025 remains highly uncertain, with a significant funding suspension in place and anticipated budget cuts in top donor countries. Finally, we must reject attempts to tarnish UNRWA's reputation and end its operation. These efforts do not only threaten Palestinian refugees, they threaten the multilateral system, they threaten a future political solution. Your action at this critical juncture will have repercussions for generations to come. UNRWA is a formidable tool at your disposal. I urge you to use it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Dear colleagues, now we start the ministerial debate. Now we start the ministerial debate. The organizing team have reminded me 10 times to stick to the order so that we can all contribute to this very, very important discussion. I'm going to ask all of you to try and stick to a 2-minute maximum if you can, so that we can accommodate everybody. With that said, I now give the floor to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Palestine, Dr. Mohammed Mustafa.
Thank you, friend. Excellencies, dear Ministers, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the Kingdom of Sweden for their leadership in convening this conference. Minister Safadi, Minister Stinnergrad, we appreciate your proactive commitment to supporting UNRWA at this very important time. We also renew our appreciation to the Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, and the Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini for their tireless advocacy in defending UNRWA amid vicious attacks by Israel against the agency and, most tragically, its personnel and the Palestinian refugees it is mandated to serve and protect. Excellencies, we meet at an existential moment, a confluence of crises demanding collective action in line with our international legal obligations, humanitarian responsibilities, and moral duties. UNRWA's role is addressing the crisis of the Palestinian refugees at this moment is more essential than ever. Since the Nakba of 1948, UNRWA has been a lifeline for Palestine refugees across Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and the occupied Palestinian territory. Today in Gaza in particular, UNRWA is more than just a service provider. It is a sanctuary standing between life and death for many. We must really support UNRWA in the best possible way, UNRWA that rekindles our commitment to these refugees, safeguard their rights, ensure a just solution to their plight in line with the international law and the General Assembly Resolution 194. At this very moment, nearly 2 million Palestinian civilians, most of them refugees, displaced over and over again, are sheltering under UN flag in UNRWA schools in Gaza. But Israel, the occupying power, has mercilessly targeted these shelters, killing civilians and humanitarians, turning schools into death zones. Gaza's entire civil population is under inhumane siege, deprived of life's essentials, forcing on them starvation, famine, and disease, a humanitarian catastrophe of epic proportions. 224 UNRWA staff have been killed, brave women and men who sacrificed everything to serve their people. We grieve the many lives lost and renew the calls for accountability and justice for all victims of this criminal Israeli aggression. Excellencies, Israel's attack on UNRWA, from targeting premises in Gaza, obstruction of its access and operations, assaults on UNRWA's compound in occupied East Jerusalem, attempts to evict them from the city, to spurious allegations and decrees against UNRWA, all part of a systemic campaign aimed at eliminating UNRWA. Israel's goals are clear: to negate the legitimate refugee status of millions and their right to return. Israel treats both UNRWA and the refugees' universal rights with outright hostility, crossing every red line. How can member states stand by while Israel attacks a UN body and even labels at it as a terrorist organization? We cannot allow Israel to get away with spreading such lies and incitement. We cannot allow such dangerous precedents. We thank the countries standing firm against these attacks. The principled stance you have taken, expressed both politically and through restoration of and increases of support to UNRWA, are fully recognized. We reiterate sincerest appreciation to the host countries, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria for their decades-long support of Palestinian refugees. We thank all donor countries and organizations for their generous support to UNRWA, not least in these times of unprecedented crisis, and recognize the efforts of the members of the Advisory Commission and Working Group on financing UNRWA. We need the redoubling of all these efforts to sustain UNRWA, including through predictable and sufficient funding, including a larger UN budget contribution. Excellencies, UNRWA is indispensable, and its human capacity and infrastructure will be instrumental in our recovery. We cannot let Israel destroy this long-standing investment by the international community in human dignity and peace. UNRWA must have all resources necessary to fulfill its mandate until a just solution brings an end to this ongoing Nakba against the Palestinian people. Let us continue our work together, continue this precious historic human partnership to achieve these noble and urgent goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Now I give the floor to Mr. Charles Mitchell, President of the European Council, and I want to thank the European Union for co-sponsoring our meeting today. Mr. President.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I'd like to thank you, dear Minister of Jordan and Sweden, for organizing this important meeting. Almost 300 humanitarian aid workers have been killed in Gaza since the start of the war. 222 of them are UNRWA workers, and I would like, on behalf of the EU, to pay tribute to them. They work around the clock to bring a touch of humanity into so much suffering, and we are all impressed by their courage and service. Humanitarian workers are the lifeline for millions of people in need, and they must be safe to do their work. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is beyond dire. It is a tragic crisis on a mass scale, and that's why an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon is absolutely necessary right now. This is imperative, because too many innocent children, women and men have been killed. Each civilian life must be protected, and there can be no double standards, never, when it comes to international humanitarian law. It must be protected always and everywhere. No exceptions, no if, and, or buts. We condemn the despicable terrorist attacks by Hamas. All hostages must be released without condition, and Israel has to respect the international humanitarian law always and everywhere. The EU, with our member states, will continue to work to get more humanitarian aid to those in need, and the work of the United Nations and UNRWA in Gaza and the West Bank is invaluable and irreplaceable. UNRWA delivers vital services in the occupied Palestinian territory and in the region, and there is no future stability without UNRWA in the equation. Ladies and gentlemen, we, the European Union, we strongly support UNRWA. This will continue. Last year alone, we provided over 40% of UNRWA's budget. UNRWA is a humanitarian and development organization. We condemn any attempt to label a UN agency as a terrorist organization. The military escalation is irresponsible in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon. The strikes carried out by Israel in Lebanon in recent days have killed and injured many civilians and caused the mass displacement of 100,000 people. We are on the brink of an all-out regional war, and this must stop. Fanning the flames of war can spread a wildfire across the region. Ladies and gentlemen, you can count on the EU to be a clear and honest voice for more peace and more stability in the region. You can count on the EU to be a robust and reliable partner for UNRWA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. With your permission, we'll suspend for a second until His Excellency departs. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I'll give the floor to the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Slovenia, whom I also want to thank for her leadership in cooperation with Kuwait in launching the UNRWA Shared Commitment Initiative, which now has the support of 123 countries. Tanya, the floor is yours, and I also thank you for co-sponsoring our meeting. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Ayman. Thank you to Jordan and Sweden for this very important initiative today, for bringing us together. We commend the work of UNRWA agency as the longest running humanitarian program of the United Nations. And for 75 years, it has been a lifeline for generations of Palestinian refugees in Gaza, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. It provides humanitarian aid as well as other essential services for humanitarian development. It is a factor of stability in the region, which faces a multitude of tensions at this moment. In light of the mounting challenges faced by UNRWA, financial, operational, and political, it is very essential that the international community remains united in our support. We are appalled by the number of casualties you were mentioning among UNRWA staff and deliberate destruction of UNRWA facilities in Gaza. Many of them served as shelters for displaced persons. We are deeply alarmed by the Israeli legislative proposals to dismantle UNRWA and classify it as a terrorist organization, and we have to do everything against it. I want to commend Commissioner General for prompt reaction to the allegations against UNRWA staff in January this year. We appreciate the establishment of the independent review group led by Catherine Colonna, the investigation of Office of Internal Oversight Service, and the internal UNRWA proceedings to ensure UNRWA's full adherence to the principles of neutrality and independence, and this is crucial. Colleagues, losing UNRWA, the agency, it will have dire humanitarian and security consequences. Slovenia, together with Jordan and Kuwait, as you mentioned, launched an initiative of shared commitments on UNRWA, expressing full support to the agency and its mandate, and I'm pleased that by now more than 120 countries express their support to the shared commitments, including all the members of the UN Security Council. The work of UNRWA is mandated by the UN General Assembly and represents an international commitment to a just resolution of the Palestinian refugee question. UNRWA must continue providing services until a political solution is at hand. And our commitment to UNRWA is thus also a commitment to a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Excellency Tanya. And now I'm going to give the floor to our dear friend, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel, who started his day today with getting together a group in support of UNRWA. The floor is yours, but I'm going to insist, my friends, that we try and really stick to the time limit, because if we continue like that, I think a lot of our friends will not have a chance to speak. Thank you. Xavier.
Maybe I will have a minute to sell. Just a few things. The first thing is, this is great to have a meeting here today, and that everybody will say that Philip will support you, and it's terrible what happened, and you need more money, etc., etc. The fact is, the one we need to convince are not in this room. We need to speak to them. We need to convince them. The fact is, we need to be efficient. We need to bring people to Palestine. If you see what the UNRWA is doing on the ground, you will understand how this country and the population would be without the UNRWA, without education, without health, without anything. So it is important to convince the other persons. What is terrible, and we have to speak about it, and Philip said it, Israel is going and want to put UNRWA on a terrorist list. They want he's already not able to go in his office. So what can we do now to put pressure on Israel that the one who are convinced here in this UNGA are able to leave UNRWA working, doing their work, and not to block them, and in fact to kill the Palestinian people without the support of the UNRWA. This is the work we have to do today. We should not do it in 6 months. Afterwards it will be too late. So please, hurry up, have some ideas, be creative, but how can we put pressure on Israel to make them understanding that there is a rule of law, there is a right of self-defense, but there are limits, and to consider here in this house, that an agency of the UN is a terrorist organization, and we shut up, we are all blind and supporting this behavior. So we have to react.
Thank you so much, Javier, and thank you again for the passion and commitment with which you address issues head-on. I think your words resonate and must lead to action on that front. Now I give the floor to His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Chair of the Ministerial Islamic Arab Contact Group in Gaza. Your Highness, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's hard to follow Xavier because he makes all the points so directly, but I will do my best in any case within the time limit allowed. Your Excellencies, I'd like to thank the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the Kingdom of Sweden for organizing this event. I would also like to express my gratitude to His Excellency the Secretary General, the UNRWA Commissioner for their efforts and the agency's workers on the ground for their sacrifices. For decades, the Kingdom has shown unwavering support for UNRWA for its role in delivering life-saving aid and delivering essential services to Palestinians within the Palestinian territories and in camps in neighboring countries. Israel's unrelenting military escalation has deepened the Palestinian suffering and prevented sufficient access to aid. The Kingdom recognizes the complex challenges UNRWA faces, especially since the last October, such as the reduction in financial resources and Israel's targeting the agency and obstructing its operations. We consider the approach by Israel's Knesset to approve bills vilifying UNRWA to be irresponsible. The United Nations published an extensive review of UNRWA last April to ensure its neutrality as a humanitarian entity. We are fully satisfied with its findings, and designating UNRWA as a terrorist organization is unacceptable. The Kingdom is steadfast in supporting the agency and continues to be a key provider of financial support, proceeding from our unwavering support for the Palestinian people. We urge all countries to maintain their support for UNRWA, to restore its ability to deliver basic needs to Palestinian refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness, and thank you for staying within the time limit as you always do. Now, I give the floor to our friend from Spain, Foreign Minister José Manuel Alvarez. José, the floor is yours, please.
Colleagues, I want to thank Jordan and very especially you, Ayman, for convening this meeting on the margins of the 79th session of the General Assembly. This year is no ordinary circumstances, and therefore there must be no business as usual for us and for UNRWA. The escalation of violence in the region on the brink of becoming an open regional war requires immediate action from all of us. And I also want to extend my gratitude to Commissioner General Lazzarini for his work at the head of UNRWA. It has never been easy for UNRWA. It has never been so far so difficult. And he and his whole staff deserve our appreciation, as well as our condolences for the 221 UNRWA employees who have lost their lives while performing their vital duties. It has been already said, UNRWA is an indispensable actor in Palestine and the region. Its mandate, given and renewed by the General Assembly, ensures both legitimacy and the scope of its mission. Its life-saving assistance to Palestinian refugees has direct effects both in their lives and also in preservation of stability in Palestine and the neighboring countries, something that Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria can easily confirm. And that is why, since the very first day after October the 7th, and when the Israeli response to the terrorist attacking from Gaza went underway, Spain identified the risk to the innocent civilian population in Gaza and UNRWA as the key actor to address the needs arising. UNRWA has a general mandate to provide assistance to the Palestinian refugees by the present circumstances of war in Gaza for almost a year have imposed on the agency an extra role of humanitarian coordination without which none of the other actors could have carried out their work so far. And for all this, Spain's commitment to UNRWA is and will be unwavering, as should be the commitment of all donors. Last year, our financial contribution tripled compared to 2022, with almost 20 million euros, while this year we have already granted 23.5 million euros. That makes, since October the 7th, 43 million euros to UNRWA. And we have done so in an extremely unfavorable context. Early this year, UNRWA faced critical allegations, which resulted in many countries halting their contribution. Not only did we not halt ours, but we increased them, and we encourage everyone to do it while requesting from the agency full transparency and accountability, which they have done. All the reports found no base for those wide-ranging allegations and issued recommendations that UNRWA has accepted and is implementing. Much of the merit of the transparency of UNRWA's work belongs to Commissioner General, Mr. Lazzarini, and his tireless work of engagement with the international community. And that's why the UN Security Council itself backed both his work and the need to engage in a political process to solve the crisis between Palestine and Israel. And yet UNRWA remains under siege. The current legislative procedure in Israel's parliament aimed to curtail this international cover and the protected international status of its worker, while its headquarters in Jerusalem are being targeted with the final objective of eviction and expulsion from the city, which we will not accept. The need of support that UNRWA experiences has never been greater. We are talking about financial support because its needs are greater, while its budget has never been adequate. We are also talking about political support to withstand external pressure and carry out its functions properly. UNRWA is a key element in the Middle East peace process. Since July the 1st, Spain presides over UNRWA's advisory committee with the firm belief that the agency needs to fulfill now its duties according to its mandate and tend to the needs of millions of refugees in the region and very critically the population in Gaza. We are talking about food, shelter, water and sanitation in this critical juncture. Education, particularly for the 600,000 traumatized children that need a safe space in which to learn that there is a possibility of a different future for them, a future of peace, a future of two states, the state of Palestine that Spain has recognized in May and the state of Israel. Spain believes that UNRWA will have a critical role later in the stabilization phase, when the Palestinian Authority will need massive international support to restore basic services and security throughout the Palestinian territory. And we are convinced that UNRWA has a key contribution to make in capacity and institutional building for the Palestinian state. Dear colleagues, UNRWA is a very, very valuable asset for regional peace and stability in the short, medium and long term. We cannot let it disappear or become irrelevant. The agency, the UN and the host countries can remain sure that Spain will be committed to UNRWA to this end.
Thank you, Jose, and I'd also mention that Spain has generously co-sponsored our meeting as well. My friends, we're 20 minutes late already. some of our colleagues have sent me notes that they need to leave, so with your permission, we understand that we all are busy, so I'll have to accommodate. I have my colleagues from Algiers, from Egypt and France who sent me notes that they need to leave quickly, so I will give the floor to our dear friend Josep Borrell, the High Rep of the EU, who is also a co-sponsor, and I thank him for that. And after that, I'll give the floor to our colleague from Algiers, our colleague from Egypt, and our colleague from France. And I would urge you, please, to stay within the 2-minute time, because otherwise a lot of our friends will not be able to speak. So please excuse me for having to reshuffle the speaking order, but we need to accommodate each other. So the floor is to Joseph, please, Joseph. And then, of course, yeah, thank you.
On the interest of time, allow me to speak in my double condition of Vice President of the Commission and High Representative for Foreign Policy, to say that the European Union starts with UNRWA and thanks to UNRWA for its tireless work, the indispensable service to millions of people in Gaza, West Bank, and across the region. We are the biggest supporter to UNRWA. We have been providing UNRWA with 353 million between 2022 and 2024. And more important, the Director General, Mr. Kuhlman, informs me that next week we will disburse the third tranche of our support for 2024, after having disbursed already the 2 first tranches. And we do that because we are strongly convinced of the indispensable role that UNRWA is doing. We welcome the UNRWA dedication to improve their internal controls, management oversight, and neutrality. And we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to provide critical resources to ensure the agency's ongoing operations, and it shows our determination to disburse next week the third tranche of our commitment for this year. And we call to the international community to join us in this effort, increasing funding for UNRWA. It is essential to maintain vital services and ensuring the agency can effectively fulfill its important role, particularly in Gaza. Together, we can make a tangible difference in the life of millions of people, nothing less than that. The life of millions of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. The next 2 minutes go to Prime Minister of Algiers, dear Ahmed. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, allow me to make the 3 following points. Firstly, UNRWA's existential and life-saving role remains fundamentally linked to Resolution 194 of the UN General Assembly. Therefore, it should continue to exist as long as Palestinian refugees are denied their inalienable right to return to their homeland, in spite of all the adverse conditions it is confronted to, and in spite of all the vicious attacks it is subjected to. Secondly, repeated attempts to discredit UNRWA and to terminate its mandate are deplorable, condemnable, and unacceptable, as their faithful target is nothing else but to liquidate one of the key components of the Palestinian question, the refugees issue. Thirdly, UNRWA deserves stronger political support and greater financial assistance from the international community. Algeria reaffirms its unwavering support to UNRWA and recalls the financial contribution of $15 million that it has allocated to this UN agency's budget last April. I would like to conclude by reaffirming Algeria's strong and sincere commitment to continue extending its support to UNRWA because of what it represents, for what it brings, and for all that it symbolizes for the Palestinian people in general and for the Palestinian refugees in particular. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next 2 minutes go to our friend from Egypt, Minister Badr, please. The floor is yours.
Dear Minister, thanks to Jordan and to Sweden for convening this important meeting. Allow me at the outset to express our utmost gratitude to and appreciation to those who are working in the field of humanitarian relief, especially UNRWA and its Commissioner General. I also extend my sincere condolences to the martyrs of UNRWA who lost their lives due to the Israeli aggression. Let us all remember that they died serving those who most in need through providing relief to the innocent Palestinian civilians of the Gaza Strip. I therefore reaffirm that Egypt firmly believes that UNRWA's role is indispensable, as it is the only agency mandated by the United Nations to relieve and support Palestinian refugees pending a just and lasting solution to their decades-long suffering. UNRWA drives its mandate from the UN General Assembly. Egypt emphasizes that in this regard that it's only the General Assembly that can define UNRWA's mandate. In this context, Egypt supports the crucial role of the agencies in Gaza reconstruction process in the future, in addition to continuing the indispensable role it carries out in providing the requisite aid and assistance to the Palestinian refugees. From this standpoint, Egypt reaffirms its unwavering support to UNRWA and expresses its keenness to continue working closely with the agency. In light of the above, Egypt stressed that the recent deplorable and unacceptable campaign aimed at discrediting this agency and its brave employees will not succeed because it's simply based on unsound foundations. Egypt believes that suspending financial contribution allocation to UNRWA is unacceptable and contributes in weaponizing of starvation as a means of collective punishment against Palestinian people. This unfair stance undermines the credibility of the multilateral system and the applicability of international law in all international actors without distinction. In conclusion, I wish to avail myself of this opportunity to join the call of the Secretary General of the United Nations directed to donors to provide the necessary funds for the agency to continue fulfilling its mandates. There can simply be no alternative to the agency, which continues to demonstrate that it is the most capable international organization in meeting the needs of refugees in the occupied territories and beyond. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now the floor goes to our colleague from France, whom we also congratulate on assuming his responsibilities and wish him the best of luck. John, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear Ministers, I thank the Secretary General, the General Commissioner of UNRWA. I also thank Jordan and Sweden for taking the initiative of this important meeting. UNRWA has been playing an essential role for 75 years, providing assistance to nearly 5.9 million Palestinian refugees. The role of UNRWA is necessary in the Gaza Strip to provide a vital humanitarian aid to the civilian population of Gaza, whose needs are immense. France pays tribute to the UNRWA personnel and to all the humanitarian personnel killed in Gaza while they were trying to rescue civilians. France also presents its condolences to their families. We recall that protecting humanitarian personnel and infrastructures. Everyone must respect international humanitarian law. Too little progress has been made to facilitate the access of humanitarian aid to and throughout the Gaza Strip. It must be improved. UNRWA and all the humanitarian partners, such as UNICEF and WFP, must be able to access. We are extremely worried about the spreading of polio within the Gaza Strip right now. We welcome the vaccination campaign carried out by WHO, UNICEF and UNRWA that is efficient despite of all the constraints. In the West Bank, UNRWA provides assistance and protection to hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the refugee camps. The refugees do not have sufficient access to the most basic services, such as water and electricity. France has continued its support to UNRWA. In 2024, its support is of 38 million euros for Palestinians in Lebanon and in Syria. We recall that France demands a real reform of UNRWA, which must apply the recommendations of the Colonna report. It is absolutely essential to ensure the respect of UNRWA's personnel and infrastructure's neutrality, to ban hate speech that are contrary to UN values in school books, and to revise the functioning of the trade unions and of the management. Ladies and gentlemen, the humanitarian dramatic situation in Gaza will only end with a political solution. That solution is a two-state solution. It is also the condition for UNRWA and its partners to respond to the enormous needs of the Palestinian civilian population in the short and in the long run. We need an immediate and permanent ceasefire and to avoid an escalation in the West Bank and the region. We will continue to condemn in the strongest possible terms the terrorist attacks committed by Hamas and other terrorist groups on the 7th of October. We will continue to demand the release of all hostages and their return to their families. Amongst them are 2 French individuals. Their release is an absolute priority for France. I thank you.
Thank you, John. And now I hand the moderation to my co-convener, Foreign Minister of Sweden. Please.
Thank you very much. Let me just remind you that we're very late, so not everyone will have the possibility to speak, but we hope as many as possible will be able to speak, so please keep it short. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Retno Marsudi from Indonesia.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, Indonesia strongly supports the work of UNRWA. I cannot imagine how the humanitarian situation will be if there is no UNRWA on the ground. 2 things that we can do to support UNRWA. Number 1, political support. Again, there is no alternative for UNRWA. We have to support UNRWA to safeguard and reinforce its mandate, ensuring that UNRWA operations remain unaffected by political pressure or attempts to delegitimize the agency. Threatening UNRWA is threatening humanity. Protection of humanitarian works like UNRWA must be ensured. Second, give your financial support. Felipe mentioned about the situation of the financial resources. We must render financial support to UNRWA within our capacity. As for Indonesia, this year, we double our annual contribution. Indonesia also contributed for UNRWA flash appeal. And next year, we will increase our contribution. To conclude, UNRWA work is not a substitute for a just solution to the Palestinian refugee issue. Rather, it is a humanitarian response to an ongoing political crisis. Supporting UNRWA is not an act of charity. It is a fundamental investment to humanity and in regional stability and peace. Lastly, we all have to recognize the state of Palestine and its full membership to the UN. It is the only way to put political pressure to Israel. And it is the only way if you want to see a 2-state solution. So let us not lose sight of what is at stake. Salute to UNRWA.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Penny Wong, Foreign Minister of Australia. And then Denmark.
Thank you. Australia has funded UNRWA continuously since 1951. UNRWA is the only organisation with the capacity to deliver aid on scale needed to address the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. Australia concurs with the Colonna Review statement that UNRWA is irreplaceable and indispensable. It is precisely because UNRWA's work is vital that UNRWA must give ongoing assurance as to its integrity and neutrality. and must ensure that it meets the high standards of governance and accountability and that it works to implement the reforms and findings recommended in these reviews. Australia will engage with partners and UNRWA to this end. Australia further believes Israel should recognise UNRWA's mandate, work constructively to ensure its integrity and facilitate its life-saving work. Israel's apparent efforts to impede UNRWA operations are of great concern. Australia has committed some $20 million of core funding to UNRWA this financial year and more broadly $82.5 million in humanitarian assistance to the occupied Palestinian territories and region since 7th October, including $6 million to UNRWA's flash appeal. We are also supporting the mass polio vaccination campaign through the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. We recognise the role UNRWA is playing in this campaign alongside WHO and UNICEF. The humanitarian crisis underlines the urgent need for ceasefire for Hamas to release hostages and for the unimpeded flow of life-saving assistance to civilians in Gaza. Delays are costing lives. This conflict has had a devastating toll on civilians in Gaza, including UNRWA staff, and the deaths of over 220 UNRWA staff since the beginning of the conflict is unacceptable, and we extend our condolences to the organisation and to their families. Earlier this week, we convened a group of ministers to pursue a new declaration on the protection of humanitarian personnel, a commitment of the international community to better protect aid workers. All countries will be invited to join. Colleagues, UNRWA's role continues to be necessary because of the political failure to resolve this long-standing conflict. The first priority must be a ceasefire in Gaza. But to break the cycle of violence, we must redouble our efforts to achieve a two-state solution. This is the only way both Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace, prosperity and security. I thank you.
Thank you, and I forgot to thank Indonesia for also being a co-sponsor to this event. Thank you. And now to another co-sponsor, His Excellency Mr. Lars Løkke Rasmussen, please, from Denmark.
Thank you. Thank you, Foreign Minister Safadi and Foreign Minister Stenergaard for hosting this important event. Almost a year ago, the lives of Palestinians changed in devastating ways following Hamas's terrorist attack. At a time of immense civilian suffering and enormous loss of life, UNRWA remains a lifeline for almost 2 million Palestinians. I would like to take this opportunity to behalf of Denmark to convey our deepest condolences to the 220 UNRWA staff killed while working to save the lives of others. We deplore the loss of life, with this being the highest number of UN staff killed in any conflict ever. Denmark has maintained our support to UNRWA. In total, we have contributed with more than $47 million since 2023. And we will continue our support to UNRWA. A few weeks ago, I visited the Egyptian side of the Rafah border, where hundreds of trucks await the opening of the border. And therefore, I want to reiterate the urgent need for full, safe and unhindered humanitarian access into and within Gaza. We also welcome the steps taken by the UN to follow up on allegations against UNRWA staff and UNRWA's commitment to implementing the recommendations from Catherine Colonna's review. And we are deeply concerned by plans in Israel to designate UNRWA a terrorist organization. So I want to echo the words of my good friend Xavier from Luxembourg. We simply have to speak up and to tell our friends in Israel that this is absolutely unacceptable. No UN agency should ever be labeled as a terrorist organization. So I can assure you that we will continue our support to UNRWA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister from Norway, Mr. Espen Barth Eide, and also thank you for being a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Ayman. And dear Philip, it's great to see you. And I want to start by saying to you that you have really stood firm in all these malicious attacks and attempts for discreditation and defamation of you personally and of UNRWA. This campaign is totally unacceptable, and I lend my voice to what my good friend Lars and Javier also just said. We have to tell our friends in Israel that what they are doing now to label UNRWA as a terrorist organization is seen by all of us as an attack on the UN family, and it's totally unacceptable. And I would like you to pass this on to all your staff, because I know what they stand in while they are doing their job. And let me also remember the 222 staff that has been killed, very tragic, in the line of duty. Norway stood by UNRWA in its darkest hour, and I'm proud to say that. It is not because we did not take seriously the accusations that were made, but because we thought that the measure taken by many was totally disproportionate to the accusation. If individuals do harm and malicious act, they should be punished individually, but you cannot take down the whole organization that is serving millions of people. And I also have to say that I'm really pleased to see that practically all the donors that suspended support are now back, and here stating their very strong support to UNRWA, which is really not only indispensable in itself, but also the backbone of the rest of the humanitarian operations in Gaza and in the West Bank. And so many humanitarian organizations stood firm, saying that they would not be tempted to take over the money from UNRWA because it's simply impossible to operate without you. Our support now stands at $45 million. We will soon present the state's budget, and to put it that way, it will not be less. And we will be a steadfast supporter also in the years to come. But it is really important that we stand up for this organization, which is an organization for all of us. We have a commitment to the Palestinian people, and until the core problem in the Middle East is solved, which we will try to do in other forums than this one, we need to continue to have UNRWA, to fund UNRWA, and to support UNRWA in its incredibly important work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Espen. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Annalisa Dodds from the United Kingdom, who also has to leave. But thank you for being a co-sponsor.
Thank you very much. As the UK's new Minister for Development and for Women and Equalities, I want to thank UNRWA, Jordan and Sweden for bringing us together. I send my condolences to UNRWA staff and their families for the many loved ones they have lost. In July, our Foreign Secretary announced the reinstatement of £21 million of funding to UNRWA, underlining our confidence in the agency. We welcome UNRWA's commitment to implement the recommendations of the Kelowna report and to ensure the highest possible levels of neutrality. UNRWA's support for the recent polio vaccination campaign underlines their importance as the only agency able to deliver at scale in Gaza and to provide services that are essential in the West Bank, Syria, Lebanon and Jordan, supporting wider regional stability. I saw this firsthand in Jordan, and I want to pay tribute to Jordan and all the other nations that have been supporting UNRWA's life-saving work. We are deeply concerned that 3 anti-UNRWA bills have passed first reading in the Knesset, including legislation that would designate UNRWA as a terrorist organisation. This attempt to discredit a UN agency is unacceptable. As an international community, we must continue to champion the role of UNRWA and condemn attacks on its facilities and staff. UNRWA's mandate is critical for a political pathway towards peace, through an end to this dreadful conflict and a two-state solution that guarantees security and stability for both the Israeli and Palestinian people. UNRWA will play a vital role in the future recovery of Gaza, from getting people the food they need to getting 600,000 children back to school. Lastly, I want to emphasise that the UK has voted in support of UNRWA's mandate consistently, and the new UK government will most definitely continue to do so.
Thank you very much. And I now give the floor to Her Excellency Lola Al Khatar from Qatar.
Very much. much, Your Excellency. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We commend the ongoing efforts of Jordan and Sweden to annually bring attention to UNRWA and its financial challenges. I would also like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to UNRWA staff, particularly Commissioner General Lazzarini, for their unwavering dedication and hard work under challenging conditions. Their professionalism ensures that UNRWA remains a reliable agency despite limited resources. Additionally, on behalf of the State of Qatar, I would like to honor the heroic UNRWA staff and aid workers who have lost their lives or been injured while assisting our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Our thoughts and deepest sympathies are with their families and colleagues during these difficult times. This year's meeting is crucial due to the ongoing Israeli occupation aggression on Gaza, its military operations in the West Bank, and recent aggression on Lebanon, which have led to a severe humanitarian catastrophe and worked to further destabilize the entire region. In its humanitarian response to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the State of Qatar pledged already an initial $50 million. Today, I would like to announce an additional amount to supplement our previous pledge with an additional $100 million. This will be This will cover different areas of humanitarian response, including support of UNRWA, which plays a vital role in delivering humanitarian assistance in Gaza amid systematic actions by the Israeli government against the organization that the international community must take a united stance to support. And earlier this year, Qatar already pledged $25 million in support of UNRWA. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the State of Qatar is proud to be among the first countries to sign the Statement of Shared Commitments on UNRWA, recognizing its crucial role in providing life-saving assistance to Palestinian refugees. We urge all countries to join this important statement. I would also like to confirm Qatar's position rejecting the attempts to designate a UN agency, just any UN agency, including UNRWA, as a terrorist organization, which is a very slippery slope, and it's going to open a box of Pandora's, basically. Qatar has consistently increased its donations to UNRWA and was the first Arab country to sign a multi-year agreement with the agency in 2018. The State of Qatar will continue to coordinate with UNRWA to support efforts to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people, while also providing various forms of humanitarian assistance in line with its policy of solidarity with the brotherly people of Palestine. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Philip Lazzarini.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for a generous pledge. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ahmed Hassan from Canada.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Thank you to our hosts, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, as well as the Kingdom of Sweden, and all the co-hosts, as well as the Secretary General, and of course, Commissioner Lazzarini, my friend. It's good to see you again. The catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate. The situation in the West Bank is increasingly dire. We're seeing more and more suffering of the Palestinian civilian population. And yet, when conditions allow, UNRWA has proven time and time again to be the backbone of the humanitarian response to the Palestinian population in Gaza, but also throughout the region. Earlier this month, UNRWA and UN partners with Canadian support helped to vaccinate over 560,000 children against polio. It is clear that to increase humanitarian aid, we don't need a technical solution, we need a political solution. And we need a ceasefire to end the suffering of the innocent civilians and to allow Palestinians and Israelis to rebuild. Speaking of polio, I recently announced in Canada an additional $151 million towards the global initiative to eradicate polio, and part of that support will go towards Gaza and the Palestinian territories to fight polio. But even without a ceasefire, humanitarian law requires all parties to facilitate the rapid, safe, and unimpeded access for humanitarian aid and workers, and to protect civilians, including humanitarian and medical workers. We appreciate the serious action taken by UNRWA to strengthen its internal mechanisms. We, of course, consider all threats to dismantle UNRWA as a threat to the integrity of the multilateral system. Canada supports UNRWA's mandate so long as a political solution has not been agreed to concerning the fate of Palestinian refugees. The agency remains a crucial source of support, stability, and fostering greater access to humanitarian support for Palestinians. And in that regard, we trust UNRWA. We've demonstrated that with core funding to the tune of $100 million over 4 years, as well as $46 million in additional funding since the beginning of this crisis, and will continue to support UNRWA. We encourage other donors to provide multi-year funding so that you can have stability, predictability, and do your work as you can then better plan for the future. In any scenario, UNRWA will be a key partner in the day after recovery in Gaza, and Canada will be there to support you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And within 10 minutes, we will have to leave the room. So please, please, please keep it short so that as many as possible can speak. And next to have the floor is His Excellency, Mr. Tobias Lindner, Minister from Germany.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, colleagues, I would like to express Germany's appreciation for the important work carried out by UNRWA across the region and especially in Gaza, where the humanitarian situation remains disastrous. And I would like to convey Germany's heartfelt condolences for the many staff members UNRWA has lost in fulfilling its mandate in Gaza. Advocating for safe working conditions is a centerpiece of our humanitarian diplomacy. Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has traveled to the region 11 times since the Hamas terrorist attacks started this crisis to raise these issues with her Israeli counterparts. Germany has repeatedly and significantly increased its humanitarian assistance to UNRWA, amounting to 130 million euros in 2024, including for Syria and Lebanon. And today, Madam Chair, I announce that Germany will provide UNRWA with an additional 10 million euro dedicated to emergency food assistance in Gaza. Germany remains a strong supporter. Germany remains a strong supporter of UNRWA's work politically as well as financially, and thus we expect UNRWA to implement the recommendations of the Colonna report with particular focus on the neutrality of staff, infrastructure and education. UNRWA's high-level action plan is charting the way forward to achieve this. The plan must be implemented and updated regularly, also in light of the results of the internal UN report concluding that 9 members of UNRWA were likely involved in some capacity in the terrorist attacks of October 7th. We look with concern at possible future funding gaps and call on all traditional and non-traditional donors to sustain and possibly increase their financial support. We call on UNRWA to build and to extend partnerships within its mandate with other UN agencies and partners in the region. Finally, Germany believes in a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine, for two peoples in the Middle East. We fully support Palestinians' right of self-determination. Every child, every family deserves to live in peace, prosperity and in dignity, and that is why we will relentlessly continue to work towards a two-state solution. I thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for a generous pledge. I now give the floor to a co-sponsor, Turkey, His Excellency Mr. Nu Yilmaz. Please.
Thank you. Dear esteemed ministers, dear colleagues, before I begin, I would like to express our appreciation to Jordan and Sweden for convening this meeting. We are at a challenging times. All the values, conventions and rules we have held inviolable turned upside down since October 7th. Israel has unleashed an unprecedented war machine against 2.3 million people in Gaza. Nothing can justify the level of violence inflicted on the civilians, targeting their homes, schools, mosques, churches, hospitals. Against this unprecedented violence, UNRWA has been a mere hope to survive for the civilians terrorized by the Israeli aggression. Let me make my point straight. UNRWA, with all its mandate, function, institutional setup, effectiveness, expertise, and more than 7-decade presence on the ground supporting Palestinian refugees in the region has simply been irreplaceable. Yet, the agency has been on the target. Unfounded but incessant Israeli accusations undermined its financial support base. The indiscriminate attacks on the ground killed 220 UNRWA workers, injured many more. Wearing a UN jacket is no more safe, one UNRWA humanitarian expressed in outrage. Against this backdrop, I once again call on all member states to support this vital organization that is one of the limited options we have on the ground to help civilians being targeted in Gaza and more the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. This year, Turkey donated an additional $2 million to UNRWA in addition to our annual commitment of $10 million. We also increased our in-kind support in terms of humanitarian aid. We increased our annual in-kind contribution from 26,000 tons to 30,000 as of 2024. And also, for us, UNRWA is not just an organization, rather it is the organization that allows Palestinian intellectual capital is formed. Today, most of our friends, colleagues, journalists, people who really think about the future of Palestine are all educated in UNRWA schools. That's why targeting UNRWA is not just a simple act of crime, but targeting Palestinian subjecthood, the very existence of what is being a Palestinian. We will continue to support UNRWA in every way possible and call on the international community to do so at this hour of need for the Palestinians. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency from Turkey. Now I have 2 speakers left, and then we will have to close this meeting. I'm very sorry about that. And that is first Belgium and then Netherlands. So I give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Theodora Gensis, please.
Belgium has been a strong supporter of UNRWA since its inception and continues to support UNRWA's work to serve Palestinian refugees. Our support is both political and financial. Our support to UNRWA is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, there is no alternative to UNRWA. To the agency is indispensable for the humanitarian response. Secondly, UNRWA is an essential factor for regional stability. Thirdly, the support of UNRWA to allow the Palestinian refugees to live as decently as possible. We express our concerns about the increase in the administrative, legal and operational barriers that UNRWA is unfairly facing, as well as any attempts to label UNRWA as a terrorist organization. We echo also the UNSG condemnation attacks against UNRWA schools turned into shelter. And we present our condolences for the staff you have lost in the current conflict that is going in Gaza. I would like also to commend the UNRWA and its staff work for their engagement and the admirable work they do. Finally, the Colonna report. This Colonna report proved that UN agency is a trustworthy institution and that can work with neutrality. Therefore, we encourage also UNRWA to implement the recommendation addressed to the agency with support from the donors to achieve specific actions for the action plan. Mr. Commissioner General, the work of UNRWA is more crucial than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, and also thank you to Belgium for being a co-sponsor. And last but not least, the Netherlands. I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Marcel de Wink.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to Sweden and Jordan for bringing us together for this important event. And let me start, like others, expressing my deepest condolences for the loss of UNRWA staff. They must always be protected while carrying out their work. Aid workers should never be a target. We realize that UNRWA staff is working under disastrous circumstances, and the Netherlands therefore commends their vital work. We are extremely concerned, like others, about the unwarranted attacks on the UN, its personnel and its premises, and this should stop. We continue to call on all parties to the conflict to comply with humanitarian deconfliction efforts and to strengthen coordination mechanisms. Humanitarian organizations like UNRWA need sufficient safety guarantees to be able to carry out their life-saving work. We value the humanitarian principles, including the principles of neutrality and impartiality, and we welcome, therefore, the recommendations of the Colonna report and appreciate the commitment of the Secretary General and the Commissioner General to implement all recommendations. UNRWA plays a crucial role in the occupied Palestinian territories, including in Gaza, where needs are incredibly high, especially at this moment in time. Amidst these needs and in this difficult working environment, UNRWA continues to deliver life-saving assistance. And these efforts need to be facilitated and supported. For this reason, we have supported UNRWA for the past years with multi-annual flexible funding, and we will make sure to continue to do so next year. Also for the provision of essential services and stability outside Gaza and the West Bank in a highly volatile region. And we would like to thank the host countries, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, for their efforts and enduring support. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Ministers, Excellencies, this meeting has offered a much-needed platform to openly discuss the difficult challenges that UNRWA must navigate. I would like to thank you all for being here today to reaffirm our joint commitments and to share your ideas on securing support for UNRWA. Our sincere apologies to those who didn't get to speak. And finally, let me thank my friend Minister Safadi for our close and very constructive cooperation on this important issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Philippe.